it's hard to make an excuse. Oh, I'm just not available when it's 5 minutes from now or 10 minutes from now.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about the radio shows I listen to are sports talk radio mostly. I mean, I listen to some that are non-sports, but these are athletes, big time athletes typically. I mean, you talk about Russell Wilson, for example, and I would bet if you tried to go through all of Russell Wilson's entourage and booking process to get him a week from now, you'd never get him. They never would be able to commit. Yeah. If you just called in 5 minutes ahead, if you were the young guy booking, and you go, hey, would you be willing to get on KWPP with Wayne and Bob in the next 5 minutes? It's going to be hard for him to say, well, I don't have time or something. It's easier to get him to or something. So I did have coming on so here in a little bit. That happens. That's never going to change with my internet.
I just wanted to let you know so you could know that I wasn't hearing you.
No, that's good to do. But the way we should learn how we adapt when we're doing this is when you take over and start talking.
I didn't get any of that, so you might want to read.
Because I know it does happen on the audio. The bad internet that we have here, which we thought we'd gotten rid of by having Starlink via our system, is usually only on the outgoing side. So I don't ever lose you at all. You lose me as it's going out. So you lose my output.
So the thing that I'd love
Just a couple more internet things.
Yeah, well, we can't fix the internet. What we can do though is when you're not coming through, is to stop what you're saying until the audio is better, so the communication would be acceptable. So I understand what you're saying, but I'll just do that when I can't hear you. How's that?
Yeah, what I had said there was that you missed was the only way I know it is by you telling me, because I hear everything that you're saying or that other speakers are saying.
Right. If I put my hand up, that means it's not coming through. Okay.
Yeah, we need that. Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Okay.
Hey, everybody out there in the audience, thank you so much for being with us. You're going to be in the audience by one of two ways. You're here live with us, and there are you out there, and more of you are going to be hearing this as replays. And right now, if you hear it, Russ is still waiting for GoToWebinar to download. He's only used it on, so again, that's a typical, I'm sorry to say it, sort of person, our age, vintage kind of comment. Russ, you've used GoToWebinar on your computer multiple times before. I'm going to actually text him here. So Bob, take over for a second.
Well, I know that today's opening day of baseball, folks, just in case you are not plugged into what's going on. So there's two things that are happening, maybe three, that may be coinciding with this renewal. And that's the way I'll put it. And I'll be interested if anybody believes any of what I'm about to say. So if you're following what's going on with the fact that baseball is the opening of spring, and today's opening day, although I watched a game from New York today and it was 38 degrees, so I don't know if anybody would necessarily think that that's springtime. But it turned out to be good for me because I'm a Yankee fan and they won, so that was good. So all the rest of the teams are playing as the day goes on. So that's one part of the renewal. There's also a movement that's possible to change our calendar from the Gregorian calendar that we're on to the Julian calendar. You heard anything about this, Wayne?
No, not at all.
So under the Julian calendar, April 1st is the first of the year. And so it corresponds with spring. And then the Julian calendar is lunar months. So they're 30 days each. and then there's a 13th, I'm sorry, 28 days each. That's why February is 28 days. So anyway, so there's a 13th month that comes in when you cut off all the extra days and you aggregate it into a month. And then that makes September, October, November, December, which are 7, 8, 9, and 10, makes sense, because that's where they would fit into the calendar.
That's Russ's. Russ, you need to mute, or Mark, would you please mute Russ until he's got some background coming in there. You're on, Russ. So that was, go ahead, keep going, Bob. Yeah.
Anyway, so there's some people that are out there who I'm sure most people would put into the crazy conspiracy theory camp, and I may be among them, but I don't believe this is actually going to happen this year. But there's a movement that to switch to the calendars where everything starts to make sense. We start following the lunar patterns instead of the man-made patterns that we're in right now. So anyway, tomorrow would be New Year's Eve if that were to be taking place as we speak. So keep your eyes open, see what happens.
Where is this movement occurring? Worldwide? In the US?
Yeah, I think if you look around the world right now, and I'm not saying that all of the protesting and the other things that are happening are going to push this event to take place. But if you look at what's going on in the banking sector, where the banks are failing, if you look at the government financial sectors where they're printing money and bailing the banks out and taking money out of the pockets of the taxpayers in the United States. I can't speak for the other countries. I'm not as familiar. And I think that there's a group of people that are, one, fed up, and two, hopeful that some of these quote unquote revolutionary thoughts, and I don't mean revolutionary from a French Revolution, US Revolution, but more of a significant change. And if you go back to the fourth turning that we've been both reading and studying, this is the end of the fourth turning, which is the most destructive and difficult period to get through. I don't know whether it's going to be this year, whether it's going to be 5 years from now, but something is going to happen, and we're going to have that renewal I was talking about in the beginning. And part of that renewal may be to switch the calendars around. So we'll see.
Mark, would you find the site for fourth turning, probably the Amazon page? Just go into Amazon, into their book section. At some point here, I want to put that on the screen. Bob and I have talked about it enough in the last 3 weeks that we both highly recommend it. If there's a book right now, a nonfiction book that we both believe you will get something huge out of, that's the book. I've listened to it. I'm probably about halfway through listening to it for the second time. It was written in 1997, and it was two historians, one of them who is now dead, the other one who is still alive and still does interviews about the book that they wrote in 1997. And they predicted this time, because when that was done in 1997, just without giving away a lot of what the book says, we were in the third turning, clearly, headed towards the fourth turning. And they described, by the way, Russ, your webcam is on, but we don't see you. I don't know what's going on. If you want to be seen, you just got to do a clicking on your sidebar over there. And you're still on twice too. And Mark, is there any way you can get rid of him in one of these ways? Yeah. Yeah, just send him something. He's probably hearing us. I would think it's because, and he's actually now Yeah, now he's got his mic on. No, he doesn't. So I'm going to unmute you, Russ, so you can at least introduce yourself and we'll keep talking. Russ, you are unmuted. How you doing, my buddy?
Well, finally I got on. I was waiting for it to download. I am so sorry. I don't know why it took 5 or 6 minutes, but I thought I was going to be on time, but as I wasn't. How you doing, Bob? Haven't seen you in a while.
It's been good. I'm good, Russ. How are you?
You just breaking even, I think.
Well, as long as we keep above ground, right?
Well, we're above ground. That's kind of a mark, isn't it? Well, Wayne, I was very interested in your conversation. Continue ahead. Enough about me. I want to hear what you were saying.
Well, anyway, Mark, when you pull it up, we're going to put the fourth turning up. And again, as we've said, this book is very predictive. And it's talking about how since at least the colonization of North America, there have been 5, right, Bob? Isn't that we are at the end of the 5th, what they call saeculums, which are essentially 4 generations. And a generation is somewhere between 20 and 25 years long. So each of these saeculums are between 80 and 100 years long. And over the last 500 years, each of the 4 that occurred before the one we are in right now, if these authors are accurate in this book, The Fourth Turning, they have ended in a very dire event. And, I think some would argue that dire event actually has already happened in 2008, possibly, or in the pandemic that just occurred. Bob, that's the one that to me is that we could have had that dire event. It could have already happened. And
it's possible that it even started before that. And it appears to me that what we're witnessing globally are authoritarian governments that have taken over. And there are people who agree with that statement and other people who don't see it.
There's the book, Mark. Click on that book and just so expand it so it stays in the screen here real quick. Keep going, Bob.
So anyway, 2008.
Yeah, that's the one. That's it.
So if you remember 2002, 2001, 2002 was the dot-com bubble, right? And then there was 2008, which is the financial crisis. If you're looking worldwide, you could look at 2014 with the Maidan crew that took over the Ukraine. And, I have my beliefs about how that happened and who was put into place. What is that? There's a bee.
Pollinated.
Let me show everybody. We have a garden out here and we need bees. And so this may look like a sex toy, but it's not. It's a bee pollinator.
Are you okay, Bob?
Yeah.
Turn it on. Hear that? Okay.
You didn't laugh, you'd have to cry.
Yeah. So just continuing with my thought here is that 2023 is the banking crisis again revisited, and we have, at least in our case in the United States, the federal government bailing out a bank, or 3 banks so far, and indemnifying all of the depositors beyond the federal insurance limit, which in and of itself is ludicrous because there's not enough money in the FDIC to pay off everybody if all the banks fail, and to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars above the limit. So if you analogize to what's happening right now in the banking sector to what happened in 2008, we're just repeating that. And the outcome may be a depression similar to what happened in 1929 and the 30s. And so what's going on around the world is the other countries are saying no more, we want out of this inflationary environment the United States has created by just printing money. And there are going to be negative consequences of that, whether it turns into an actual shooting war, whether it turns into changing the financial structure from the United States dollar to the Chinese yuan, Russia and China in partnership, along with other countries around the world that have enough economic clout to rival the United States. All these things are possible. None of them are necessarily going to happen, but keeping your eyes open. The point is, though, I think the fourth turning started at the turn of the century, and the pandemic was just another one of those things that are part of that. What do you call it? The crisis period. I mean, we've been in crisis since 2001, 2002. It wasn't real obvious in 2008, and if it's not more obvious than it is right now, I don't know what is. The outcome.
Yeah, Bob, I think most of the people that follow this fourth turning theory would say that you're right about the fourth turning starting in about 2001, and that event of the 9/11 would probably be indicative of that. I actually heard an interview of Strauss recently, one of these authors, where he actually made it really clear. And if you really read the book carefully, you'll see he isn't talking about worldwide situations. He's talking about North American, interestingly. And they actually do believe that the turnings have worldwide significance, but that's not what they documented. These guys are historians, and they were documenting North America. And that included Canada, so it isn't just US, but US and Canada. But anyway, I think they would say that whatever's going on worldwide is probably not the same thing they were dealing with in the fourth turning. It was really North America. Real quick, because right now is a good time to do it. You've got something new in your background. I've always wanted to ask Russ more, because as we've talked with Russ several times, he's sat in pretty much the same place. And Russ is an amazing fly tyer, everybody. And fly tying is a topic that sometime we will maybe interview him or somebody else very specifically about, because it is very economic in terms of the way to catch fish in a very natural sort of manner. But the fish that are in those art situations in the back of you, Russ, if I remember right, you've got a couple of boxes that you made that are on your wall of flies that you tied and put into an art circumstance. Are any of those that, or are those just fish that we're seeing?
Well, there's you see the prints behind me are by a dear friend from Boston, and those are watercolors by the four main species of trout: the brown trout, the bull trout, the West Coast cutthroat, and the rainbow trout. But the boxes that you're talking about, to my other shoulder, back shoulder over here, you'll see a box, and it's got actually three flies in it that were tied. Actually, they were tied in the 1800s by a very famous fly tyer. They're on a bark cleat hook. They're an English pattern. They're actually from feathers from an Afghan pheasant that is now extinct. I don't know if I'll be able to take it down so you can. I doubt that you'll be able to see it. I'll try.
Russ, your shoulder and arm is moving great.
Yeah, I know. Not bad for an old guy who's had both of them replaced. I don't know. No, I don't think.
No, we can see it, Bob. We can see it a little, Russ. We can see it. That's a lot bigger than I thought it was.
Well, yeah, these are in the size 4/0 hook. These are big boys. Let me go get you another display that would be a little easier to see. Hold on. I'll be right. But these are old English patterns to answer your question. Let me answer the question first. I got into this when I was being medically retired from the Navy in 1973, and a buddy of mine who just got back from Vietnam was in the hospital with me, and he was actually from Montana, and he said, "Hey, Russ, I want to get your mind off of your situation, so let me teach you how to tie flies." And he did. So I actually learned in Balboa Hospital on how to tie flies.
You didn't learn it. I was guessing that was a childhood thing.
No. I had started fly fishing when I was 6 years old, but I hadn't really got into fly tying until I was laid up in Balboa. And he actually taught me how to tie flies. And his name was Bob Hublin. And he was from Montana, as I said, and was really quite a good accomplished fly fisherman and fly tyer. And in the beginning, I was tying basically patterns that I would be using, the typical trout pattern that you might see any place in the western rivers of the U.S. You know, the humpies and the drakes and the PMDs and all of these different categories of flies that are typically represent some type of a mayfly or a caddisfly that would habitat the waters of Idaho, Montana, or Wyoming. And I did that for years. I used to teach fly tying. I invented some flies. I did a lot of those kinds of things. But then as I went on down that road, about the time you and I were in Denver, Wayne, back in the 90s, I got interested in Atlantic salmon flies, the flies that were tied by the original masters of the sport. Little brief history on that, if you're interested. Back in the 1700s, when the dukes and the earls and the royalty of Great Britain were exploring Africa and South America, etc., and they were buying spices and they were buying wood and they were buying all kinds of things, including furs and feathers. At that time, the feather trade in the world was pretty big. And from that spawned creating what amounts to is a lure made out of feathers. And so they forged their own hooks, and since they didn't have the technology to make eyes on the hooks, they actually used catgut. All these flies that I showed you have the original forging, original catgut. Everything is original according to the patterns that they tied in the beginning. And so I started doing that. It was back in 1990 when I started doing it, Wayne, when we were together with in our adventure in Denver. And I fell in love with it because it was very, very difficult. It took great expense on my part to get the feathers, which you can't get now, from many species of birds that are no longer with us, or they have gone extinct or are endangered. And I put together quite a collection when you could get it, and the last of it that you could get. Wow. And barely in time, as it turned out. And I didn't know how scarce these feathers were until I did research later. But I ended up with quite a lot of feathers. Unfortunately, the artisans that used to make the hooks, teach the method on how to tie them. Many of those men have died, and women, and so some of that art is beginning difficult to find access to. Not only because of the artisan is no longer available, the hooks are no longer available. You can buy substitute hooks, obviously, from other companies, which I do, but the original forging patterns are no longer available, to my knowledge. That doesn't mean that someone doesn't know about it. And then, of course, the feathers, in many cases, like that display I just showed you, those three patterns, you would never be able to tie again because those feathers are no longer available thanks to the Afghan war. They're extinct from a pheasant that was quite popular in Afghanistan, back in 60s and 70s and 80s. And but let me go get a pattern that I recently.
Grab your other box, and I'm going to let Bob tell us about his background, because that's a new background behind you, Bob, that you're either in a different room or something, because we haven't seen that one. And then I'm going to point out one that I have that is brand new that I have that I want to show you for a completely different reason. So go ahead, Bob, tell us about your background there.
Well, honestly, I'm been living with my girlfriend, and this is her living room, dining room that we're in, and it's a Chinese motif. And so what's behind me is a Chinese screen, as well as the Chinese emperor and empress right there.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And the table and the chairs that, when you can see part of this chair back, are all the same kind of vintage.
Well, last week we saw the chair back because you have that, but you were not in that room because you didn't have that background.
Well, I may have had the camera at a different angle, but I'm pretty sure it was. Okay, well, whatever. But so she knows a lot more about, how old these are, what they represent, and so forth. I don't really know that. You want to tell us? She's
Those are the
shocked.
ones, those are the ones that I've seen, Russ. So when we get ready, we'll have you describe.
Okay.
So they're from China. That's all we know.
Let me quickly show you something that's in my office that's new.
Oh.
And all you do is you can just kind of see the angle of it. That is that's a Sony LCD 55-inch television
Oh my.
that I bought at an auction for $1.
I'm going to give you some money. Have you get me a couple of those?
And
I think they have a limit on selling more than $2. I don't know.
and I, you know, I've told you guys in the audience, and then especially those that are listening to the replay, for years that auctions are something I greatly enjoy. I enjoy, you know, negotiating buy prices, and you know that's what an auction you do, and you're only bidding what you want to bid, and making purchases that you enjoy. After 40, how many years are we married now? 43 years. I finally got my wife interested in them, and she now has been buying a few things at some auctions, and she loves it. But anyway, this was an auction in which I bought that for $1. And the reason I think the people put it in the auction, it was a consignment, is there isn't a remote for it. And on the back of it is a partial a partial wall mount, but not all of it. So nobody else bid on it because they thought, well, it probably doesn't work. Even though the auction house had said it works. They said, we turned it on and it works. And nobody would pay more than $1 for, it's not, I checked it out. I think it's 6 years old is when this model came out from Sony. So if you don't go to auctions and you call yourself at all a colonomic, you ought to go to some sometime
Yeah,
because
I would have to. That's great. That's great.
So now let's go back. Russ, show us.
Well, let me turn this.
I'm sitting on the floor because I haven't figured out where to put it yet.
Let me turn this light off. Maybe the glare will be a little better. Hold on.
Ooh, that's going to be better. I can tell you already.
Anyway,
that'll be good.
I am not going to show you all the flies I have. It bore you guys to death, but this is some of the ones that I've tied. The top one, can you see it better at that angle or this angle?
Yes,
No,
yeah, when you angled it, the glare went away. Yeah, like there, a little bit, not this way a little. There you go. That's good. That's good right
The
there.
top one is called the double chucker. That is actually, I would like to say, was my own. That's my own pattern of a famous artist who actually invented that fly. But it's obviously with an Idaho chucker feather, from the chest. You remember what a chucker looks like. Yeah, actually, that bird was transplanted in Idaho from Pakistan. But that's on a number 3 hook, and the name of that hook is a limerick hook from a real forge. And you probably can't see the eye on the hook because it's just not going up enough. But that's all catgut. The eyes are made out of catgut. The second one is called the Summer Number 2, and again, that's a pattern that I copied from an artist. And that's on a number 3 limerick hook as well. And then the last one is called the Captain. And I don't know if you can see it here, but those feathers.
We can see them really well, Russ. So that's cool. Yeah.
That green feather in the background looks darker than green, but it's a dark green. It's a gorgeous feather. It's incandescent almost when in the right light. Is from that same pheasant from Afghanistan, and then you see the feathers with the eyes on it. It's from a bird that is no longer with us. That's a very rare tie, just because the feathers are just not available.
Put your hand next to it, Russ. Any one of them, so people can see how big those are. That's a huge fly, everybody.
Well, yeah, those are for Atlantic salmon. You got to remember, the men and women that started the sport back in the 1700s they were the royalty of England and Ireland, and they were funding all over the world. And the feather trade was big at that time. And so when they started tying flies to catch these beautiful salmon that were in the streams they owned, it became the thing to do. So when the gentlemen had their cognac and cigars in the evening after the big dinners and the dances and everything, they'd go to their smoke room and they would share their new patterns, which, by the way, were probably tied by their stable boy, right? So anyway, but all of those became patterns, and I'll show you what I'm talking about that in a minute. But here's some more patterns that I tied. These are a little more conventional. These are on 1/0 hooks. As you can see, they're much smaller. I don't know. Can you see them?
Yeah. There's a glare when you move them around, but otherwise,
it's hard for me to.
That's good.
Get it right.
What are you doing wearing a Washington State shirt, by the way?
Oh, well, my grandson graduated from there. He's getting his doctorate degree. I think I told you that. Austin, didn't it is? Yeah. Anyway, these are more standard patterns. This is the Durham. This is the Peacock, and this is the Dusty Miller over here. And these are more standard patterns. Again, the artisans started doing that in the 18th century, 17th century. Here's another way that I mount them. This is called the Bluebell. I don't know if you can see it.
There we go. There, right there.
Okay. And I could spend 2 or 3 hours telling you how I do that, but at the end of the day, it's pretty involved. I'll take about 30 hours to tie one of those. Every single feather, every single thing is, including every thread, is exactly in the right spot that it has to be in the sequence that it has to be, and it takes a long time to do. Anyway, that's my hobby when I get bored. And you can buy these books that are represent various masters from all over the world that do the same thing that I do, and they reproduce some of the more famous patterns in the world. And so the point is, there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of patterns. And I mean, it's an amazing hobby. Unfortunately, as I said, most of these patterns can no longer be reproduced because the feathers are just not available. So anyway, that's what I was doing when I was getting better.
Yeah. Russ has had shoulder surgery, shoulder replacement, and actually not the typical kind. And I'll let him describe it because it was different than what your typical shoulder replacement would be. And we'll let him describe that. But I asked him to come on today for a lot of reasons. One is, he's one of my dearest friends in the world, as Bob is, but I'm going to be with him next Monday and Tuesday. And we're going to be visiting properties that are ones that have some level of distress and a lot of times environmental. And for those that don't remember, and Russ and I were partners in environmental business for a period of time. And that's what he was talking about earlier. And we've been partners in some kind of a business ever since, really. And in some periods of time in multiple different ones. So I mentioned it to you guys last week. We're going to just ask people to come on for either a whole hour if they'd like, or half an hour as Bob and I do this show moving forward. And we'll just get different people that'll come on sort of as surprises for you guys. So Russ has done at least 2 previous sessions with us. And we talked about very specific topics in those, but this time I just thought we'd bring him on. He'd just kind of do a little storytelling like he just did, and let Bob and I do a little storytelling like we do. And then we've got several comments and questions I'm seeing. Mark, would you watch those and make sure we address them at some point as we're talking? Real quick, we have Alicia Rocco tomorrow. And that's going to be a lot of fun. She is a naturopath and has been making products, doing things for many years. She's in Ohio, and we've had her on before. She's a great speaker. Highly recommend you try to make the time tomorrow to see if you can be with her live, or if not, watch her on the replay. Mark, could you bring up our new website that we're going to unveil in the very near future, and possibly that tab that we were using yesterday, which are several examples of new logos that we're looking at. We think 7 years is about the right time. We have the 7-year itch. That's how many years we've been doing these webinars now. And we're going to be modifying both our logo and our website. And I want to just talk for a second about one of the very big changes that's going to occur related to what we provide to all of you that are members of our community moving ahead, which is more than just these webinars, and live events that we've helped sponsor through the years. But we're also going to do something that's quite a bit more value, we think, for you as we try to help make the planet better and help make you make some money doing it. So just a quick description of that. And it's copying, to some extent, a company called Advisory Cloud. So Mark's putting up the new webpage. Just scroll through it a little bit, and as I talk here, Mark. And Advisory Cloud is a 10-year-old business. I didn't learn that until today. I thought they were 3 or 4 years old, but they've been around 10 years. And for the first 6 or 7 years of that 10 years, they were a place where if you were a person that was a leader in your own business or in a business that was larger and there were other owners of, you could become a member of Advisory Cloud, and you would become, they would go out and find companies who would want you to be on their advisory boards, and they would help place you on companies' advisory boards. That's still what they do today. Over time, they've had over 10,000 people, business people, that they have placed on boards over those 10 years. About 3 to 4 years ago, and the reason I don't know exactly how long is I was talking today to their marketing director for the other side of their business, which is what they started 3 or 4 years ago. And she didn't know the exact time because she's only been on with them for 2 years. But what they started 2 years ago or so, 2 to 3, was instead of just having board members, they now have companies that pay a fee to be a part of them, where those are the companies that they then allow these board members to become board members for, these business leaders. So I started with them about 4 years ago, and I had 3 companies that I was on a board with. And then at the same time, they started this program not long after I started, to where we actually put our company, the EAT Community, into that pool. And right now we have 67 board members. And every quarter, we have a meeting, a live meeting with those board members. And every week or so, we pose new questions to them, and that are things that we'd like their input on to help us in our business. Does that all make sense to Bob and Russ, at least?
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. Well, I have gotten to know their CEO, the guy that founded the company. And have you guys done the math yet? I haven't told you yet what it costs. If you were a paying member today as one of those board members, and you wanted to be on one board, it would cost you $200 a month. If you wanted to be on 3 boards, it would cost you $400 a month. If you wanted to be on an unlimited number of boards, it would cost you $1,000 a month. I don't think they have very many members that are paying that $1,000 a month. I think most of their members are in the first two categories, probably most in the one that's $200 a month. But do the math now of the 10 years and 10,000 members of how much money they've made.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, it's in the multi-millions.
Yeah.
Dollars. And now that they have companies that pay, the companies have a range also, and it runs from $300 a month at the bottom up to $600 a month, and there's a middle in there. I think it's $300, $400, and $600, and that is telling you how many of the board members that are paying themselves that would be put onto your board. We're going to do a similar thing at EAT, to where we're going to make it available, and at the early stages, we're going to do this for our original elite members, of which we have, I think, 800 still today of our 32,000. So all of our 800 original EAT elite members, so all of those got involved in the first year, about a year and 2 months of our existence. They're going to have the ability to become either or and. So they could either be one side of the coin or the other, or they could even be both, where they are agreeing to be mentors, not board members, but mentors and consultants for X number of companies. Just like Advisory Cloud does, except instead of being advisory board members, they're going to be mentors and consultants for them. And then if they own companies themselves, they could also have their company become one of the, we hope, 200 or 300 that are those companies that get mentored too. And we're going to provide a lot of services to be able to help those mentoring activities, including writing business plans for the benefits of those companies, helping them with funding types of efforts, writing proposals, helping them write proposals for projects that they might want to be doing, giving them a place in a live setting to actually be doing things for their business in. We've been doing that here, as you know, at our property in Colorado for almost 12 years now. But I mention it now because Russ and I are visiting a property for the umpteenth time on his case, but because he knows the owner very, very well, they've become very close friends. In my case, I've probably been there, 6 or 7 times, Russ, in that range.
Yeah.
And we are going to be making the owner of this property a very sincere, and we think, offer next week to buy it from him. And we think it's very likely he's going to accept it. And we believe that in 60 days from now, maybe even as short as 30, we're going to have that property, which is a couple 100 acres in a really beautiful place, only 35 minutes from downtown, right? Downtown Boise, but Russ?
About that.
It's about in that range. And yet it is.
You're driving a pickup or a Porsche.
Okay. And yet that property is, when you're on it, if we were to blindfold you and take you there, you would not think you were anywhere near any civilization.
You would have no idea. You'd have no idea.
Yeah.
You would absolutely have no idea.
It's got a canyon going through it that is got a beautiful stream that is fed by a series of reservoirs above it, which means that its flows go down, but it does mean it has year-round flows. They get low at some points. There is a native trout population in it. We're going to try to enhance that.
It's called a red
But-
bed trout.
And we're going to make that our second ecological business park site. And it will be a place where these companies that choose to be in the role of EAT members, to where they're getting benefits, to where they could potentially be doing some development of their business. And also where they could have residences. And where that's the same situation that we have here in our property in Colorado. So Russ and I are pretty excited about this. And we also have several businesses that we are working on. In one case, Russ is really leading, and we'll just give a glimpse of it. And Russ, if you've got anything that Mark can go to that will describe at all the water wing, hydro generating, electric generating circumstances, he could pull it up for us. But we'll talk in much more detail about this later. But
Well, I don't. That is in a state of re-engineering, and I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised when it's completed. I was able to discern some things that needed to be changed in their plan, and I think that those changes. And I have yet to see the new prototype. So just remember the name Water Wing. It's coming.
And well, we're together next week, and I already have some videos of this. We're going to video a couple of other inventions that Russ has some involvement in, and I've had some also. But Russ has actually been involved in one of them in the development side, and in the second one, he's been an observer of it. And we've talked about it, and I'll talk about that one first. It's a little device. It's about this big that will tighten barbed wire fence in a patented and unique way. And we actually almost got it on the market, what, 5 years ago, Russ? Or so?
Yes.
Just didn't get
Yes.
there. But we believe we can get there now, to where you put this and you use a bit on a drill, or you use a wrench,
You get a wrench.
and you just turn that sucker a little, and it tightens your barbed wire fence.
Yeah, repairs
and
the
you-
barbed wire fence in about 9 seconds. You could actually tighten so much you could actually break the wire if you chose to.
And the cool thing is you can put logos on it. So
Yeah.
if you're John Deere or Tractor Supply or you name it, you can have your name on it, and you could have it on fences all over wherever this would be sold. And it's probably what, Russ, less than a $10 price point? It's in that range.
Oh, way less than that. Way less than that.
Yeah. So pretty excited about it. The second one, which is still got development needed, but it's been used, is you're going to mention what's the right way to call it. I'm just going to start to say it is a crusher that can be as small as using a little small electric motor to run it, or it could go on a PTO of a tractor, or it could be much larger. But it will take the hardest rocks you can imagine when you feed them into it and put them down to the size of smaller than sand, right, Russ? I mean, it
Well,
truly is.
it's actually, well, yes and no. It depends. To use a big boulder, that would be out of the question. But Rick, it's actually was a tool that was used in doing research for gold mines, and it was invented by a gentleman that has been in the rock crushing business for years. And it literally reduces, let's say, a rock the size of a golf ball into powder, into talcum powder. I mean, it just reduces it to nothing. And what that was is that when they were doing prospecting, you could very quickly pick up your stone that you were maybe taking out of a vein someplace, and you could process it immediately and pan it to see if you're wasting your time or if you had a good prospect for perhaps in this case gold, or it could be used for silver, it could be used for platinum. But the point of it is that the inventor always knew that the gold, for example, was exactly where God put it, and that was in rock. He wanted to have a way to quickly discern whether or not a vein that he might have uncovered was worthwhile pursuing or filing a claim on. And so he would use this crusher. It was a handheld crusher at the time to discern that. And he would very quickly reduce it to powder. He might have 6 or 10 pounds of it. He would reduce it to powder. He'd go down to the stream and pan it and to see if there was anything to follow. The unit that you're going to see on Monday, Wayne, is one that basically he and I built together, and it's a little larger than that now. It's about, I guess it's about 20 inches in diameter.
Wow, that's a lot bigger.
Oh yeah, it weighs about 300 pounds. You're not going to carry that around your hand. It's made out of some pretty heavy stuff, and we've modified it a bit. I won't go on air right now to tell you how we modified it, but the fact of the matter is we can process a ton of ore in less than an hour.
Wow. And driven by what kind? What would it take motor-wise?
Yeah.
What's that?
Electrical motors.
And about how many horsepower, size, so on?
Well, I'm not going to tell you that.
We want to leave some suspense. We want to leave some suspense.
You're going to see it. You'll take some pictures and we'll get to share it. I just want to find out what my partner thinks on it. You know, you're going to be with him on Monday. So I mean, it'll blow your mind is what it'll do. I just hope it's not snowing. I just hope it's not snowing too hard.
Yeah,
I hate to do that.
You said that to me, but that's hey, we can't control that.
No.
So Bob, we've got, by the way, everybody, we've got very close to our time here. Is there any other topic real quickly we want to tweak people on that maybe we'll make sure we talk about next week, or any quick thing to end today that you have?
The only thing that I was questioning about your ecological parks, if you see that as a potential refuge, I should say, when and if the proverbial S hits the fan.
Yes, absolutely. I don't think it'd be prudent in today's world to ever do anything today that is development oriented as a experimental circumstance and not have in mind that if things went in the wrong direction, that it could be used in that fashion too. So the benefits of this property, for example, that allows this to be thought of that way, I didn't mention, it's got both cold water from wells, it's got the water rights for that, but more importantly, it's got warm water. And I don't mean even just warm, but hot water. That is, and the key is there's lots of hot water in places like Idaho from underground sources. Most of it's contaminated, or most of it's
most of it's got a lot of sulfur in it. This doesn't.
Not evil. It's disgusting. And in today's world, it's not affordable to treat it even. So, and if you go to hot springs that are not very far from this location, most of them have sulfur in it. You'll smell it while you're sitting in the springs and so on. This is not. This is absolutely pure, clean. Drink it as it comes out of the groundwater, which is hugely better for a circumstance. Very, there's probably 300 days of sunshine. And so the ability to use solar, it gets a little windy. So the ability to use wind. But maybe more importantly, this water wing that Russ talked about, and having water not just in the ground, but running through the property, giving the ability to make electricity from that source. It checks all the boxes, Bob, as a property that
How many acres is it? I missed that.
200.
It's about 220 acres.
Yeah.
It's all in the canyon.
Yeah. Well, that's what's also not quite appropriate to say. The top of it is ag land. It's even been used with irrigation. So it's not like it's all canyon walls and a little valley. It's got that, but I don't know how many of the acres would you say, Russ? It's 50, 60 acres?
Or
Flat?
easily,
Yeah.
yes.
More than enough to grow all the foods you'd need,
Yeah.
either in the ground or in greenhouse, for a couple hundred people or more.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And how about access to it? Is it easy to get to or challenging to get to?
It's very,
Really,
it's very easy to get to. And that's what is most interesting. It is easy to get to, but yet very unknown. I mean, that sounds like a double talk, but that's really the case, Bob. Like Wayne was saying, it's well, from where I live, which is a suburb west of Boise, it's about a 50-minute drive. And from the east side of Boise, it's like a 30-minute drive. But at the end of the day, it's right off the freeway. It's only about 9-10 miles off the freeway.
oh, Russ, it's not that far off the freeway.
Whatever
It's
it is, yeah.
6 miles maybe.
Whatever it is. But it's
Of that road, probably, Bob, most of that's gravel. So not even most, right? I mean,
just about the
3
last.
miles gravel, but it's really well maintained. I mean, it's not. But again, if you haven't been there, you wouldn't even. I bet 90% of the people who live in Idaho don't know it's there.
Oh, way more than that. Way more than that. No, I'm seriously. This is an enigma. This little canyon. Well, it's not little, but this canyon is not only beautiful, it's just well hidden. You cannot see it. It's like a Bruno Canyon out in the desert. Until you get there, you can't believe it's there because there's nothing that would indicate that it's there. The same with this canyon.
Yeah.
And so it's hidden. It's not developed to any degree. It's got power, however, to it. It's got
The closest neighbor, Bob, what?
Yeah,
Russ is 2 miles, probably.
maybe. Yeah, maybe. But at the end of the day, it's just a little Shangri-La, well hidden, and it's got all the right, like Wayne said, it touches all the buttons for development along the lines that we were discussing.
Neat. Well, I look forward to getting your report after you've been there again.
Well, I think Wayne will probably be able to fill you in.
We will.
He's going to have a big smile on his face or not, but
So are you traveling Monday?
yes.
I am. Monday, Tuesday, I'll be with Russ.
Okay.
Russ, that's good news. Are you sure you want to change that appointment Tuesday? I mean, I'd love it if we could be together all day, but you don't need to. It's up to you.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be with you.
All right. You're good. All right. Good. So, and to answer your question, I'll do it through the text too. Whatever best optimizes our time, because it sounds like we have a decision to make as to what we spend Tuesday doing. So,
Well, you're either going to be looking at some properties or you're going to be looking at something in Hagerman, which is what I want to show you.
yeah, and it's probably one or the other, right? It's not both.
Yeah, it's not going to be both. Hagerman's 90 minutes one way.
Let me think about it tonight, and we'll figure it out. Let's make the decision tomorrow if that
Okay.
works.
Okay.
All right, everybody. This has been fun. We are at the top of the hour. I enjoy this. I think Bob does, and it's so cool to get Russ on. By the way, you're free to come on any of these Thursdays, Russ. We kind of want to make this a multiple host environment. We think that's the best thing to do because then we get more listenership or watching people that have different interests. Mark, is there any questions that were there that we really need to deal with right now? Let's end with that, if you don't mind. We can get those, but what about question?
Hi, this is kind of from the beginning, but I was going to ask if you had a recommended book for beginner fly tying Or would you recommend somebody taking a class if they wanted to get into doing that?
I think that there's a lot of books in there, and I wouldn't know which one's the best. I could give you the name of several. What I think I would do in your area, or do you live in the Northwest? Where do you
No,
live?
she's in Ohio. She's in Ohio.
Okay. I am certain that there are some fly fishing courses in your area. I would recommend maybe go to an Orvis fly shop, for example. They oftentimes, I know the ones here in Idaho, all have fly tying lessons typically that they give to their clients, and join a course. So you can go online and maybe go to the Fish and Game department. They would certainly know of a fly tying course. That's the best way to get to learn, is because the books just can't really show you. You can go on YouTube and you can get fly tying lessons and, you know, the how-to lessons, and they're all very good. But hands-on, until you start doing it, I can't tell you how difficult it is. You just have to have your hands on the hook and on the thread. And then all of a sudden, when you finally figure out how to manipulate the feathers and how to put things together, it's a wonderful hobby. But I can tell you, you can certainly contact me. May I give my email, Wayne?
Sure. Go ahead.
You know, just go to Russell Biagne, RUSSELL Biagne, B as in boy, IAGGNE. So it's Russell Biagne at gmail.com. And I'll be very happy to help you any way I can.
And Aaron, he will. I mean, meaning he's not just going to say that. He loves having other people learn how to tie. And he's always been very, thankfully, respectful of the fact that it's way too tedious for me. So I've not ever really learned it. It doesn't necessarily take a real, what would you call it, non-moving hand, not because I actually, even still at my age, have very good, solid feel. It's just boring to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But
well, that's because you see, while I'm tying, I'm fishing. You're not.
no.
So
By the way,
I've got
that's the
two.
way a lot. But I think you guys, some of you heard my story about when they had the World Championship fly fishing tournament here in my area. How these guys would set up rods in the morning before they were going to fish a reach of these streams in the afternoon, and they would hopefully have all the flies tied. But it never failed that in this 3-hour fishing window that they had, they would tie some flies while they were even, they'd set the rods down for a few minutes and have a fly already started, but they would tie up something. But he's actually joking a little. You can't be sitting tying a fly as you're sitting and casting.
Well, I can tell you, Wayne, on my many trips to Alaska, I did sit on the bank and tie flies, only because my buddies kept losing them.
Well, and by the way, everybody needs to know, and I don't think he's doing this chase any longer, and it's only because he doesn't get up there as much anymore, but maybe he is still doing it. He is not very many ounces, not pounds, but ounces away from the world record king salmon on a fly rod. And it was a big goal of his for a long time to get.
It was a big boy. Yeah, it was 54 pounds.
Yeah.
Fair caught, fair hooked.
And you're at about 53 something, right? You're less than a pound. You've got, yeah. So Aaron, this is a guy you want to learn to fly fish from, that's for sure. Not just tying flies, but even doing it. She's going to come out and visit me sometime, Russ. We'll get her to Idaho. Aaron's on our staff, and
I'll send her the name of books and where to go, and just get ready, because it's really a lot of fun if you like it. So
Awesome.
You answered my second question, is did you ever fish with him? So the first question was,
I fished a little bit.
I figured as much, but you weren't talking so much about it. I was trying to kind of reconcile 30 hours to make one fly, and how the hell you did that.
Well, Bob, these are show flies that I showed you on.
Yeah, right. I know.
Those will never see the water. Okay.
How do you do 30 hours? I mean, that's got to take a month.
I guess you'd have to come here and I'll show you sometime.
I don't have 30 hours for that. That's why Wayne says he doesn't have the patience for it.
Russ, we'll get him there also. And by the way, I mentioned this last week, Bob and I talked about it, and it had a huge impact on him. And I'm going to recommend to you, we're going to end this by me recommending to you that you should go see this, or maybe we'll see it together. Maybe this is something we can do Monday night. Have you seen Jesus Revolution yet, Russ?
No, I haven't.
You would love it. And
I'm in.
Bob didn't just love it, it made a huge difference in his life. And we'll talk more about that later.
Okay, I'm in.
Yeah, we'll see if we can find it. If it's still in theaters, we'll go Monday night. If not, I think maybe it's streamable now. Do you think it is yet, Bob, or not? It's maybe not.
I think it may have finished its run in the theaters, so it's possible you might be able to stream it. I haven't looked, but
Well, let me interrupt you. That young lady had another question before we cut her off. She's still on?
Yeah, I'm sure she is. By the way, while she's coming back, Bob, I didn't answer his question.
Right.
This hat has quite a story to it.
a hockey head, no?
And I will tell it. No, not now. I'm not going to tell a story now, but just quickly, that's a dog. That's a Labrador Retriever, and that's a pink ribbon, because this was a hat for a fundraiser that I was really heavily involved in to raise money. This lady that this is for has breast cancer at very advanced stage. She's had a double mastectomy. It's just not looking good. I mean, the reality is we don't know whether she's going to make it. She's in her 40s. She's not that old of a lady, and very vibrant. And she is an amazing veterinarian for the retriever world. And so we had an event called Retrieving for Love. Her name is Sarah Love. Last name is Love. And it's one of the hats that we all got. So for attending the event and helping raise money. And this is a thought for everyone who's very calling up. And Russ has been a part of a number of these kinds of things, but for even, for also very important causes. One lady who is one of the trainers of retrievers essentially put this event on, and it was probably first advertised 3 months before it occurred. They raised $100,000 through this event, and it all went to Sarah. All the professional dog trainers that were involved in it donated their time. There was a huge auction that all the items were donated, and the auction rate. So in total, they raised over $100,000, and they did that all with one lady's efforts. Russ has done some similar things, I know, and he has one thing that's got a spirituality involved with it, where I was very fortunate to be able to go the very first year of it, which is called the Idaho Catholic Men's Conference. And that raises money for all kinds of different charities. And that very first year, I think we expected 700 guys, right, Russ?
Yeah.
And 900 showed up the first year. We had to bring chairs. We were lucky the room was big enough. And that was now 7 years ago, Russ. Was this the seventh annual?
We had our ninth one this year. So
Ninth. It was up to nine.
And we sold completely out. And fortunately now we do streaming. 2 locations all over the West. And so now we have way more than 1,000 people at it, because they are at their church or they're at a school or someplace or at a home, and we actually are streaming it to them. So we have quite an audience now. The largest one, of course, is in Cincinnati. It's not that large, but it's certainly the largest in the West.
Aaron, did you have a second question?
No, that was it. Thank you so much for your time. I will email you and we'll get tying some flies.
Hey, Sarah, I look forward to it. Tight lines.
Aaron. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey,
Good seeing you again, Russ.
You bet, Bobby.
I'll probably be coming your way sometime in late May.
Doors open.
All right, sounds good.
Go ahead, take us out, Mark.
Say goodbye.